The scent of antiseptic burns my nostrils as I stare at the ceiling tiles, counting them again and again until the numbers blur together. 36. Always. 36. The same tiles I've been staring at for 3 weeks, ever since the crash that took everything from me. Miss Reynolds? The nurse's voice floats through my consciousness. Your fiancé is here. Fiancé. The word still feels foreign, like a coat that doesn't quite fit. Ryan proposed 2 days after I woke up in this bed, his eyes wet with tears and his hands trembling as he held out the ring. I said yes because, well, what else could I say when your boyfriend of 3 years kneels beside your hospital bed while you're still processing the fact that your parents are dead? Hey, beautiful. Ryan's familiar cologne mingles with the hospital smell as he leans down to kiss my forehead. Mom's here too. She brought some of her famous chicken soup. Linda sweeps in behind him, perfectly coiffed as always, carrying a thermos like it's made of gold. Darling, you look so much better today. Her smile doesn't quite reach her eyes. It never does. I force myself to sit up straighter, ignoring the stabbing pain in my lower back. Thank you, Linda. That's very thoughtful. She bustles around the room, rearranging flowers that don't need rearranging, while Ryan pulls up a chair. His hand finds mine, warm and solid, but something about his touch makes my skin crawl. Maybe it's the way he keeps glancing at his mother, like he's seeking approval. The insurance adjuster called this morning, Linda announces, her back to me as she fiddles with the blinds. Such a tragedy about the brake failure. These things happen so randomly. My throat tightens. Random. Nothing about that night feels random anymore. The more I think about it, the more questions surface. Why were my parents' brake lines cut clean through? Why did the police close the investigation so quickly? The estate lawyer wants to meet next week, Ryan says, squeezing my hand. Mom offered to help with all the paperwork since you're, well, since I'm broken. That's what he means. The doctors say I might walk again with extensive therapy, but for now I'm trapped in this bed, dependent on others for everything. On Ryan, on Linda. That's not necessary, I say, trying to keep my voice steady. I can handle it. Linda turns, her perfectly painted lips curved in what might be sympathy or satisfaction. I can't tell anymore. Nonsense, dear. You focus on getting better. We'll take care of everything. A knock at the door saves me from responding. It's Nora, my best friend, carrying a laptop and wearing the determined expression I know so well. Sorry to interrupt, she says, not sounding sorry at all. But Caitlin has her physical therapy evaluation in 10 minutes. Linda's smile tightens. We were just leaving anyway. Come on, Ryan. As they gather their things, I catch Nora's eye. She gives me the slightest nod, confirming what we discussed last night. She's found something in my parents' financial records, something that doesn't add up. Ryan kisses me goodbye, his lips lingering longer than necessary. I love you, he whispers. Love you too, I lie, watching him follow his mother out the door. When they're gone, Nora closes the door and pulls out her laptop. You're not going to believe what I found, she says, her voice low and urgent. I look at the thermos of soup Linda left behind, at the engagement ring weighing down my finger, at the get well cards lining my windowsill. Everything looks perfect on the surface, just like Linda's smile. But I'm starting to see the cracks. The wheelchair catches on the threshold of Ryan's house, my new home, supposedly. I grip the armrests, fighting the urge to scream as Linda rushes forward. Oh, let me help you with that, dear. Her manicured hands grip the handles before I can protest. Ryan, darling, this doorway simply won't do. We'll need to make some adjustments. The way she says adjustments makes my skin crawl. Everything about this house screams Linda. From the precisely arranged throw pillows to the family photos where Ryan's smile matches his mother's, practiced and perfect. I can manage, I say, but she's already pushing me into the living room. My wheels leave marks on her pristine carpet, and I feel a small spark of satisfaction. Ryan appears with my bags, hovering uncertainly. Mom, maybe we should let Caitlin settle in first. Nonsense. Family dinner is a tradition. Linda wheels me to the dining table where Tom, Ryan's father, sits reading financial papers. He barely looks up. "Welcome home," he mumbles, shuffling his documents into a folder. I catch a glimpse of my father's company letterhead before it disappears. "The estate paperwork?" I ask, keeping my voice neutral. Tom's eyes flick to Linda. "Just reviewing some details. Nothing for you to worry about." "Actually, I'd like to—" "Who's hungry?" Linda interrupts, placing a casserole on the table. "Ryan, help Caitlin with her plate." I clench my jaw as Ryan cuts my food into bite-sized pieces. 3 weeks ago, I was a successful architect. Now I'm being treated like a child. "We've been thinking," Linda says, passing the breadbasket. "With your condition, it might be best if we postpone the wedding planning. Focus on your recovery first." My fork freezes halfway to my mouth. "My condition? Mother?" Ryan warns, but Linda continues. "And of course, there's the matter of your parents' estate. Such complex affairs require a clear head. Tom and I are happy to handle everything." "I'm perfectly capable." Linda's right. Tom cuts in. "The stress wouldn't be good for you. We've already spoken to the lawyers about temporary power of attorney." The room goes silent except for the scraping of forks against plates. I feel Ryan's hand on my knee under the table. Probably meant to be comforting, but it feels like a restraint. My phone buzzes, a text from Nora. "Found something. Call me ASAP." "Everything okay?" Ryan asks, peering at my screen. I lock the phone quickly. "Just Nora checking in." Linda's lips thin. "That friend of yours always hovering. You need family now, dear. Not distractions." The casserole turns to ash in my mouth. I remember my mother's voice. "Trust your instincts, Katie. When something feels wrong, it usually is." "I'm tired," I announce. "Ryan, could you help me to our room?" Once we're alone, Ryan kneels beside my chair. I know Mom can be intense, but she means well. She just wants to help. I study his face. The earnest eyes, the worried crease between his brows. Does he know? Is he part of whatever his parents are planning? "Ryan," I start carefully. "Don't you think it's strange how quickly the police closed the investigation into my parents' accident?" He stands abruptly. "Don't start this again. The brakes failed. It was tragic, but accidents happen." Like how my father's company suddenly lost 3 major contracts the week before? What are you implying? His voice hardens, and for a moment he sounds exactly like his father. A knock at the door saves me from answering. Linda pokes her head in, smile fixed in place. "Ryan, your father needs help with something in his study." As Ryan leaves, Linda lingers. "You know, dear, stress can do terrible things to a person's mind. Perhaps we should schedule an appointment with Dr. Matthews. He's an excellent psychiatrist." The threat in her words is clear as crystal. I force a smile. "Thank you, Linda. I'm just tired." She nods, satisfied, and closes the door. I wait until her footsteps fade before pulling out my phone to call Nora. My parents' voices echo in my head. "Trust your instincts." And right now, every instinct is screaming that I'm trapped in a house with people who want to destroy me. Game on, Linda. Nora spreads the documents across her kitchen table. Each paper another nail in the coffin of my trust. Bank statements, transfer records, emails, a paper trail of betrayal that makes my hands shake. "Look at these dates." She points to a series of transactions. 3 days before your parents' accident, Tom's company started acquiring shares in your father's firm. The day after the funeral, they gained controlling interest. My throat tightens. A hostile takeover? More like vultures circling. Nora pulls up another document. "And this, Linda's been corresponding with Dr. Matthews for weeks. They're building a case to question your mental competency." The room spins. I grip my wheelchair's armrests, knuckles white. Ryan must know. Maybe not. A new voice makes us both jump. Marcus stands in Nora's doorway, hands raised apologetically. "Sorry, the door was open. Ryan asked me to check on you when you weren't answering his calls." I reach for my phone. 6 missed calls. I'd turned it to silent while digging through evidence of his family's treachery. How much did you hear? I ask. Marcus closes the door, his usually playful expression serious. Enough. And I've suspected something was off for a while. Tom's been bragging at the club about his newest acquisition, your father's company. Why should I trust you? He pulls out his phone, showing us a video. Linda and Tom in their study, unaware they're being recorded. The accident was unfortunate timing. Tom's voice crackles through the speaker. But it simplified things. Once we have control of her assets... We need to be careful, Linda interrupts. That friend of hers is too nosy, and Ryan's getting attached. He actually believes she'll walk again. He'll understand eventually. We're doing this for him too. I feel sick. When did you record this? Last week. I was dropping off some papers for Ryan and heard them talking. Something felt wrong. Marcus runs a hand through his hair. Look, Ryan's been my best friend since we were kids, but what they're doing, it's wrong. A key rattles in Nora's front door. Ryan walks in and the room freezes. There you are. His smile falters as he takes in the scene. The scattered papers, Marcus's presence, my obvious distress. What's going on? Just visiting friends, I say, but my voice shakes. Ryan picks up one of the documents. His face pales. Where did you get these? Does it matter? They're real, aren't they? He sinks into a chair. It's complicated. Dad says your father's company was failing. They're trying to save it. By murdering my parents? The words explode out of me. By having me declared incompetent? What? No, that's not... He sees the video playing on Marcus's phone, his parents' voices filling the silence. Marcus, what the hell? I'm sorry, man, but you needed to know. Ryan's face contorts. You're all conspiring against my family? Caitlin, after everything we've done for you. Done for me? My laugh sounds hysterical. Your parents killed mine. They're trying to steal everything I have left. And you... My voice breaks. You're just standing there, defending them. He reaches for me, but I wheel backward. Katie, please. Don't call me that. Only my parents called me Katie. His phone buzzes. Linda's face appears on the screen. Ryan stares at it, then at me, torn between two loyalties. Answer it, I say coldly. Tell your mother her plan is working perfectly. The grieving, unstable fiancé, spiraling into paranoid delusions. Just what she needs for her case. It's not like that. But he answers the phone anyway. Hi, Mom. Yes, I found her. She's fine. The lie settles between us like a wall. As he walks away to continue the conversation, I look at Nora and Marcus. I need your help, I say quietly. Not just to expose them, but to make them pay. All of them. Nora squeezes my hand. Marcus nods grimly. Outside, Ryan's voice drifts through the window, reassuring his mother that everything's under control. He has no idea how wrong he is. The time for being a victim is over. Linda wanted to declare me unstable? I'll show her exactly how dangerous I can be. The flash drive feels heavy in my palm as Marcus hands it over. We're in my parents' empty house, the one place Linda can't monitor my movements. Tom keeps everything, Marcus says, glancing nervously at the windows. Financial records, emails, even recorded conversations. He's paranoid about being double-crossed. Ironic. I plug the drive into Nora's laptop. How did you get this? Ryan asked me to help organize his father's home office. They trust me. His voice catches. Maybe they shouldn't. Files populate the screen. Hundreds of them. Nora starts sorting through them while I watch the door. Ryan thinks I'm at physical therapy. The lies come easier now, like breathing. Holy shit, Nora whispers. Caitlin, look at this. It's an email chain between Tom and Linda, dated 2 months before the accident. They'd been planning this for weeks. The takeover, the accident, everything. But there's something else. They hired someone, I say, reading further. A private investigator to dig up dirt on my parents. Why would they? There's more. Marcus pulls up another file. Your father wasn't just their competitor. He was investigating them for fraud. These documents prove Tom's company has been embezzling millions. The room tilts. My father knew? And was about to expose them. Nora's fingers fly across the keyboard. The accident wasn't just about the takeover. It was about silencing him. A floorboard creaks behind us. We spin around to find Ryan standing in the doorway, face ashen. I followed you, he says quietly. I don't know what I thought. Nobody moves. The laptop screen glows between us, displaying his parents' crimes in stark black and white. Ryan, I start, but he holds up a hand. Is it true? His eyes lock onto Marcus. All of it? Marcus stands slowly. I'm sorry, man, but you need to see this. He pulls up the video of Tom and Linda, but adds another I haven't seen. Tom meeting with someone in a parking garage 3 days before my parents' accident. Ryan watches, his hands curling into fists. When it ends, he looks at me with tears in his eyes. I didn't know. Katie, I swear I didn't know. Don't. The old nickname burns. You suspected something was wrong. You just didn't want to see it. What are you going to do? The question hangs in the air. I wheel myself to the window, looking out at my mother's neglected garden. What would you do if someone murdered your parents and tried to steal everything they built? They're still my family. And what am I? His silence is answer enough. Ryan. Marcus steps forward. Your parents killed 2 people. They're planning to declare Caitlin mentally unfit. They're stealing her company, her inheritance, her life. I can talk to them, Ryan pleads. Make them understand. Understand what? My voice rises. That murder is wrong? That they should feel bad about orphaning their future daughter-in-law? Let me fix this. Like you fixed my wheelchair ramp? Or my physical therapy appointments that keep getting mysteriously canceled? I laugh bitterly. You can't even stand up to your mother about dinner plans. His phone buzzes. Linda, right on cue. Ryan stares at it, then at the damning evidence on the screen. I need time, he whispers. Take all the time you want. I slip off my engagement ring and hold it out. But understand this. I'm going to destroy them, with or without you. He takes the ring, looking lost. What happened to us? Your parents killed us too. They just used different weapons. After he leaves, Nora and Marcus look at me expectantly. The flash drive sits between us, loaded with enough evidence to ruin the people who murdered my parents. We need more, I say, surprising myself. This proves they killed my parents, but I don't want them in jail. I want them to lose everything, just like I did. Marcus nods slowly. I know where to start. Tom's keeping bigger secrets than this. Are you sure about this? Nora asks. Once we start, I touch my empty ring finger, feeling stronger without its weight. They thought I was weak, helpless. It's time to show them how wrong they were. The psychiatric evaluation paperwork sits on Linda's pristine coffee table like a loaded gun. Dr. Matthews adjusts his glasses, pen poised, while Linda hovers nearby, concern etched perfectly on her face. Just routine questions, he says smoothly. Given your recent trauma and emotional state. I grip my wheelchair's armrests, feeling the trap closing. Ryan stands by the window, shoulders tense, while Tom pretends to work on his laptop in the corner. Of course, I say, matching the doctor's tone. Though I'm curious why my medical power of attorney wasn't consulted about this evaluation. Linda's smile flickers. Darling, as your future mother-in-law and current caregiver? My medical power of attorney is Nora. I interrupt. Has been since my parents died. The paperwork was filed last week. The pen freezes mid-stroke. Tom's typing stops. That's impossible, Linda says. The courts granted us temporary... Check again. My phone buzzes. A text from Marcus. Done. Check your email. I open my laptop, turning it toward them. You might want to see this, Dr. Matthews, especially the part about falsifying medical records. Color drains from Tom's face as he reads over the doctor's shoulder. Emails, bank transfers, detailed plans to have me declared incompetent, all courtesy of his own meticulous record-keeping. This is absurd, Linda sputters. Ryan, tell her, is it true? Ryan's voice cracks. The accident. Dad, did you really? Everything we did was for this family. Tom snaps. Your father's company was threatening our reputation, our lifestyle. My father, I cut in, was going to expose your fraud. So you had him killed. Both my parents, actually. Quite thorough. Dr. Matthews stands abruptly. I should go. Sit down. My voice carries an authority I didn't know I possessed. You're as complicit as they are. Those falsified evaluations could cost you your license. Linda's mask finally cracks. You ungrateful little... Mother. Ryan steps forward. Stop. You're choosing her? After everything we've sacrificed? Sacrificed? I laugh, the sound sharp enough to make them flinch. Let me tell you about sacrifice. I wheel closer to Linda, watching her back away. While you were planning my parents' murder, my father was working late to save his employees' jobs. My mother was planning my wedding shower. They sacrificed everything for people they loved, while you sacrifice people for things you want. You have no proof, Tom says, but his voice wavers. My laptop chimes again. Actually, I say, the SEC just received quite a detailed report about your company's activities. Marcus was very thorough in gathering evidence. Marcus? Ryan whispers. He helped you? Someone had to. The words hang between us like a verdict. Linda lunges for my laptop, but I'm faster, wheeling backward. She stumbles, catching herself on the coffee table, sending Dr. Matthews' papers flying. It's over, I tell her. The company, the money, your reputation, everything you killed my parents for? It's gone. We can fix this, Tom says desperately. Ryan, tell her we can work something out. But Ryan's looking at his mother, really looking at her, maybe for the first time. You killed her parents. We protected our family, Linda insists. No. Ryan's voice hardens. You destroyed it. Sirens wail in the distance, growing closer. Tom's phone starts ringing, probably his lawyer warning him about the SEC investigation. The police will be here soon, I say, watching their faces crumble. Along with federal agents, I'd start thinking about what you're going to tell them. Linda collapses onto the couch, her perfect facade shattered. Tom stares at his phone like it might save him. Dr. Matthews edges toward the door, but Marcus is there, blocking the exit. Ryan kneels beside my wheelchair. I'm so sorry, he whispers. I should have seen it. I look at him, really look at him, and feel nothing but tired. Yes, you should have. The sirens are right outside now. Linda starts to cry, but her tears don't move me. I think of my mother's garden, of my father's laugh, of all the moments these people stole from me. Caitlin, Ryan pleads, reaching for my hand. I pull away, watching red and blue lights flash across the walls. Some things can't be fixed, Ryan. Some betrayals run too deep. The front door bursts open and justice finally arrives. The interrogation room feels smaller with each passing hour. Detective Harris slides another photo across the table. My parents' mangled car, twisted metal gleaming under crime scene lights. Miss Reynolds, we need to discuss your accusations against the Winters family. I stare at my reflection in the two-way mirror, wondering who's watching. Ryan? Linda? Tom's expensive lawyers? Everything I told you is documented, I say, but my voice wavers. The evidence Marcus gathered, all the files, recordings, everything, has vanished from my laptop. Even my email accounts are empty. We've spoken with Dr. Matthews, Harris continues. He's quite concerned about your mental state. Says you've been experiencing paranoid delusions. Of course he does. The good doctor probably got a hefty bonus to say that. The door opens. Linda walks in, perfectly composed in her designer suit, followed by her attorney. My stomach turns. Caitlin, sweetheart. Her voice drips with concern. We're all so worried about you. Don't. My wheelchair feels like a cage. Don't pretend you care after what you did. See what I mean? Linda turns to the detective. Ever since the accident, she's been unstable, imagining conspiracies, accusing us of horrible things. Where's Marcus? I demand. He should be here, confirming everything, but he's gone silent, unreachable for days. Marcus had to take an unexpected business trip, Linda says smoothly. Poor thing was so upset about your accusations. The detective shuffles his papers. Miss Reynolds, without concrete evidence, they killed my parents. My fist slams the table. They're trying to steal everything, declare me incompetent. Ask Ryan. He knows. Ryan is devastated. Linda interrupts. His fiancée, making these wild allegations about his family. The door opens again. It's Nora, eyes red from crying. Caitlin, I'm so sorry. They're saying I could be charged with conspiracy if... My last ally, crumbling under pressure. Linda's smile widens slightly. Nobody wants to press charges, her attorney says. The family simply wants Caitlin to get the help she needs. By committing me? The words taste like ash. Like you planned all along? It's for your own good. Linda reaches for my hand. I jerk away so violently my wheelchair hits the wall. You're not well, dear. Let us help you. Detective Harris closes his notebook. Given the circumstances and Dr. Matthews's recommendation, no. I wheel backward, but there's nowhere to go. You can't, this isn't... The facility is very discreet, Linda says. The best care, private rooms. You'll be comfortable while you recover. Recovery. Like my suspicions are an illness to be cured. Like my parents' murders can be erased with therapy and medication. Where's Ryan? My voice sounds small, desperate. I need to talk to Ryan. He agrees this is best, Linda says gently. He's signing the paperwork now. The world tilts sideways. Ryan, my Ryan, signing away my freedom. Choosing them. Again. Two orderlies enter, wearing bland smiles and hospital uniforms. Linda steps back, victorious. This won't last, I tell her, even as they grab my wheelchair. The truth always comes out. She leans close, dropping her voice so only I can hear. Who's going to believe you? The traumatized, unstable girl in the wheelchair? We're your family now, dear. Your only family. I look at Nora, but she won't meet my eyes. The detective studies his papers. The orderlies wait patiently, like this is all normal. All right. You'll see. Linda pats my cheek. This is for the best. As they wheel me out, I catch a glimpse of Ryan in the hallway. He's crying, but he doesn't stop them. Doesn't even look at me. The facility van waits outside, white and sterile and final, like a coffin. Your parents would understand. Linda calls after me. They'd want you to get better. I close my eyes, feeling the last pieces of my life crumble away. They've won. Taken everything. My parents, my freedom, my future. Even my revenge has been turned against me. The van doors close with a soft, definitive click. But in the darkness behind my eyes, a small, hard kernel of hatred begins to grow. They think they've broken me. They think this is the end. They have no idea what I'm capable of. 3 weeks in the facility, and Linda finally visits. She sweeps into the sterile meeting room, immaculate as always, carrying a bouquet like she's visiting a sick friend rather than her prisoner. The roses are wilting in your mother's garden, she says, arranging the flowers in a vase. Such a shame. My fingers twitch on my wheelchair's controls. One push, and I could send her sprawling. But I stay still, remembering Marcus's last message, smuggled in through a sympathetic nurse. Wait for my signal. Ryan misses you, Linda continues. He's been so worried. Stop. My voice is hoarse from disuse. We both know why you're here. She sits, smoothing her skirt. The board meeting is tomorrow. Tom needs your signature on some final documents. To complete the takeover of my father's company? To protect what's left of it. She pulls out a folder. You're not well enough to manage such responsibilities. I laugh, the sound echoing off institutional walls. That's why you had me committed? To force my signature? Oh, darling. Her smile turns predatory. That's just a bonus. The real pleasure was watching you destroy yourself with wild accusations. Even Ryan couldn't deny your instability after that performance. My phone buzzes in my pocket, the one Marcus smuggled in. Linda's eyes narrow. You're not allowed. I hold up the device, showing her the screen. A live stream of Tom's office, where he's meeting with Marcus right now. What is this? Insurance, I say, as Tom's voice fills the room. Never meant for it to go this far. The brake lines were just supposed to scare him. Linda lunges for the phone, but I wheel backward. That's being broadcast to the board members right now, along with proof of the embezzlement, the falsified medical reports, everything. You're lying. Check your phone. She pulls it out, fingers trembling. Her face goes ash white as messages flood in. That's not all, I continue. The police have reopened my parents' case. Turns out Dr. Matthews kept his own insurance. Detailed records of your instructions to falsify my psychiatric evaluation. You stupid girl. She stands, towers over me. You have no idea what you've done. Actually, I do. I wheel toward the door. I've destroyed you, just like you destroyed my family. The only difference is I did it legally. They'll never believe you. You're crazy, remember? About that. I press the call button. The door opens, revealing Detective Harris and 2 officers. My unstable episodes were quite convincing, weren't they? Amazing what a good performance can accomplish when you're playing to an audience. Linda's composure cracks. You planned this? All of it? I learned from the best. I gesture to the officers. She's all yours, Detective. As they read her rights, my phone buzzes again. A text from Ryan. I'm so sorry, I should have believed you. I delete it without responding. Linda stops at the doorway, handcuffs glinting. He really did love you, you know. Ryan. He was the only part of this that wasn't calculated. I know. The truth tastes bitter. That's what makes it worse. Was it worth it? She asks. Destroying our whole family? I think of my parents. Of trust betrayed. Of love twisted into weapons. You destroyed your family the moment you decided murder was an acceptable business strategy. I just exposed the rot. After they lead her away, Marcus appears. Tom confessed everything. The board has voted to return control of the company to you. And Ryan? Waiting outside. He wants to explain. I stare at the wilting roses Linda brought, remembering my mother's garden. Some things, once broken, can't be fixed, but others can grow back stronger. Tell him I'm not accepting visitors. I turn my wheelchair toward the window where sunshine streams in. I have a company to rebuild. Marcus squeezes my shoulder. Your parents would be proud. For the first time since the accident, I feel steady, whole. The wheelchair doesn't feel like a prison anymore, but a throne. Linda wanted to break me. Instead, she taught me how to be unbreakable. The roses in my mother's garden bloom crimson against the morning frost. My wheelchair leaves tracks in the dew as I work, pruning dead leaves, clearing weeds. The doctors say I might walk again someday, but for now, this is enough. Marcus appears at the garden gate, newspaper in hand. The headline screams, Winters found guilty, 20 years for corporate fraud and conspiracy. Thought you'd want to see this, he says, settling onto the stone bench. Tom's confession sealed it. I continue pruning. Linda? 15 years. No chance of parole. The satisfaction I expected doesn't come. Instead, there's a hollow peace, like the quiet after a storm. Ryan called again. Marcus adds carefully. He's still asking. No. The shears snap closed on a withered stem. Some bridges stay burned. Marcus shifts, uncharacteristically nervous. There's something else you should know about how I got involved. I stop working, finally looking at him properly. The morning light catches something in his expression I've never noticed before. I knew your father, he says. He helped me once, years ago, when I was in trouble. Financial trouble. He could have ruined me, but instead, he gave you a second chance. I remember my father's philosophy. Everyone deserves one mistake. Marcus nods. When I saw what Tom and Linda were planning, I couldn't just watch, but I couldn't warn you directly. They were watching too closely. So you played both sides. The pieces click into place. That's how you got access to Tom's files. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you sooner. He stands, hands in pockets. I know trust isn't something you give easily anymore. A bee buzzes past, landing on one of my mother's roses. She always said gardens were like people. Sometimes the ones that survive the harshest winters bloom the brightest. Help me with these beds? I ask, holding out an extra pair of gardening gloves. The winter bulbs need planting. His smile is answer enough. We work in comfortable silence until Nora arrives, carrying coffee and apologies. I should have been stronger, she says. When they threatened me, you came back. I interrupt. That's what matters. She joins us in the dirt, and together we plant new life in old soil. The company is thriving under joint leadership. Nora's financial expertise, Marcus's connections, my father's vision carried forward through my designs. As the morning warms, I wheel to the center of the garden, where a small plaque marks my parents' memory. Not their graves, those are elsewhere, but their legacy. The place where they taught me about growth, resilience, and the patient work of nurturing something beautiful. I have a meeting with the board at 11. Marcus says eventually. Want a ride? Actually, I grip my wheelchair's armrests. I want to try something. Using the garden wall for support, I slowly push myself up. My legs shake, but they hold. One step. Another. The physical therapy is finally paying off. Nora gasps softly. Marcus moves to help, but I wave him back. This is something I need to do alone. 3 steps to the plaque. My knees threaten to buckle, but I stay upright, touching the cool metal surface. The company's safe. I tell my parents' names. Your legacy is protected, and My voice catches. I learned how to be strong, like you taught me. A final rose needs pruning, one my mother planted the week before she died. As I reach for it, my fingers brush something unexpected. A small envelope, weathered but intact, tucked among the thorns. Inside is a letter in my father's handwriting, dated the day before the accident. I don't open it. Not yet. Some truths need time to bloom. Marcus and Nora wait patiently as I make my way back to the wheelchair. They don't mention my tears or the letter clutched in my hand. Ready? Marcus asks. I look at my mother's roses, my father's plaque, the garden that survived winter to bloom again, at the friends who became family when my old one shattered. Yes, I say. I'm ready. The morning sun warms my face as we leave, and somewhere in the distance, a new day begins.
Life before Michael was pretty straight-laced. Wake up, trade a bit on the stock exchange, head to my job in online advertising, then rinse and repeat. Simple, mundane, but it was mine. I always figured that someday I'd add a family to the mix, husband, kids, the whole shebang. I met Michael at a seminar for amateur traders. He was a speaker, all confidence and broad smiles, talking about big moves in the real estate market. After his talk, we ended up at the same coffee station. Strong coffee, strong investments, right? He joked, pouring himself a cup. Something like that. But I usually go for less volatile stocks myself, I replied, trying to sound more savvy than I felt. Oh, playing it safe, huh? I like taking a bit more risk, he said with a wink. That wink should have been my first warning, but who was I to know? We started seeing each other, and things moved fast, swept up in romance and the excitement of it all. He was 10 years older, had his life figured out, or so it seemed. Loads of charm, money, and promises that came easy to him. About a year into our whirlwind romance, Michael popped the question on a chilly evening, right there on the balcony of his fancy high-rise apartment. "Marry me, Sarah. I want all my tomorrows to start with you," he said, holding out a ring that was frankly too flashy for my taste. But who was I to complain? It felt like a dream. 2 days before the wedding, Michael dropped another surprise, just as we were finalizing our dinner menu. "We need to talk about something, Sarah. It's important," he said, serious all of a sudden. "Sure, what's up?" I asked, figuring it was just some last-minute guest list drama. "I think we should sign a prenuptial agreement," he said, avoiding my eyes. "A prenup? Now? 2 days before the wedding?" I was shocked, feeling a mix of hurt and confusion. "Why didn't you bring this up before?" "It's just practical, Sarah. It's not about us, it's about protecting what we've got. You know, just in case. I've got a lot tied up in real estate, and you're doing well with your trading. It's just standard stuff. My lawyer drafted something up. He says it's pretty standard, protects both of us." His casual dismissal stung. "Standard for who, Michael? Your lawyer? I don't even have one." "Look, he's a good guy. He'll take care of everything, even talk you through it. On me, of course. I'll pay for it," he added quickly, as if that would smooth everything over. I remember standing there in his kitchen, feeling like a complete outsider in what was supposed to be my future home, with my future husband who suddenly seemed like a stranger. But I was too deep in, too embarrassed to call anything off, and honestly, too scared to start over. So, I caved. "Fine. Let's just get this over with," I muttered, feeling a mix of defeat and anger boiling inside. "Great, I'll set up a meeting for tomorrow. You'll see, it's all standard stuff," Michael assured me, but his reassurances felt hollow. The next day, his lawyer, a slick guy named Ron, walked me through the document. "It's all very straightforward," Ron assured me, flipping through pages that might as well have been written in another language. "You keep what's yours, he keeps his. Clean and simple." Clean and simple, right. If only I knew then just how complicated things would get. After the whirlwind of the wedding, which honestly was more of a blur of faces and congratulations than anything, Michael and I settled into what you could call married life. But even that felt more like living with a charming roommate than a husband, what with all the terms we'd signed off on. Michael's life was a series of business calls and trips. "Gotta keep the wheels turning, Sarah," he'd say, kissing my forehead before jetting off to some city or another. I mostly stayed back, working from home, trading stocks like it was my lifeline. It wasn't the family life I'd pictured, but then again, what was? His business was booming, and my trading wasn't doing too bad either. But whenever I brought up maybe putting my earnings into buying a place for me, Michael had his own ideas. "Hold off on that, babe. I'm eyeing a new property, could use a bit more liquidity," he'd say, always planning the next big purchase. One evening, he came home more stressed than usual. "Market's brutal, babe. Got a loan coming up due that I totally spaced on," he admitted over a too-late dinner. "Can't you roll it over or something?" I asked, trying not to sound too concerned. "That's the kicker. It's tied up with my other assets. Bit of a cash flow snag," he explained, sounding tired. Suddenly he remembered my savings, the ones I'd been hoping to put towards a house, maybe start that dream family. "You could help," he said slowly. "I mean, it'll ease the snag." Michael looked at me then pleadingly, really looked at me, and for a moment, I thought I saw the man I'd fallen in love with. "Okay, I'll do it. What's mine is yours," I said, echoing the words he hadn't exactly said but had implied in so many ways. Right, of course, babe. It's just until this thing smooths over. I'll pay you back," he promised, reaching over to squeeze my hand. I nodded, feeling a mix of apprehension and love. Love because I believed in us, in him. Apprehension because, deep down, I knew money and love were a messy mix. Days turned into weeks, and those weeks into months. Michael's promises of repayment became as frequent as his business trips, mentioned but never fulfilled. Our conversations about it were circular, always ending with him kissing my forehead and promising, "Soon, babe, soon." And me? I believed him every time. Or at least, I wanted to. Because confronting the truth, that this was becoming less of a marriage and more of a business arrangement, was a reality I wasn't ready to face. The arrival of our son, Jack, was supposed to be the happiest time in our lives, but it quickly turned into one of the most challenging. Michael was often away on business trips, leaving me to juggle the baby, household duties, and my own work. I wasn't just riding the emotional roller coaster of a new mom, I was doing it pretty much on my own. One evening, after a particularly grueling day of balancing Jack on my hip while trading on my laptop, I broached a topic that had been weighing on me. "Michael, I was thinking, maybe we could get a little help? Like a nanny?" I suggested tentatively over dinner. Michael, who had just returned from a trip to Chicago, looked up from his plate, eyebrows raised. "A nanny? Sarah, come on, we agreed you'd handle home stuff. Jack needs his mom, not some stranger." "But I'm also trying to work, Michael. The trading doesn't just happen by itself, and it's our livelihood too," I countered, feeling the frustration bubble up inside. "You're doing fine. What, you want a medal for doing what you're supposed to do?" His tone was dismissive, and it stung more than I expected. "You knew what you were signing up for. I'm out earning, you're home with the kid. We're both doing our parts, right?" As weeks turned into months, the financial strain began to show. Michael stopped transferring money to our joint account, leaving me to handle all the expenses, the taxes on the house, the car payments, groceries, clothes, everything for Jack. It wasn't just the physical toll, the financial juggle was becoming a nightmare. One night, after paying the latest batch of bills and realizing my account was running dangerously low, I confronted Michael. He had just come back from another trip and was in a surly mood. "Michael, the joint account is dry. I had to use my savings to cover everything these last few months. When can you transfer some money?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He scoffed, tossing his keys on the table. "Oh, come on, Sarah. You live in my house, drive my car, and you're still complaining? You should be grateful." "Grateful? Michael, I am managing everything here while you're gone. I'm not asking for thanks, but I need support," I said, my voice rising in frustration. "Look, I'm dealing with a lot right now. The business needs every penny." "You're not the only one with pressures, Sarah," he retorted before heading off to the shower, effectively ending the conversation. It was clear I was on my own. I couldn't rely on Michael, I needed to ensure financial security for myself and Jack. That's when I threw myself into stock trading more seriously. Each day, after Jack fell asleep, I'd stay up, researching and making trades. Slowly, my account began to grow, bolstered by a series of successful deals. Keeping this a secret from Michael felt wrong, but necessary. He had made it clear that his money was his. Well, mine would be mine. I set up a separate account he didn't know about, moving my trading profits there. It was the only slice of independence I felt I could cling to. Jack was growing up fast, and with him, the daily logistics were becoming more complicated. The old car we had was barely hanging on, not nearly spacious enough for his stroller and all the paraphernalia that seemed necessary whenever we stepped out the door. One morning, while Michael was sipping his coffee and scrolling through his phone, I brought up the topic. "I need a new car, Michael. The trunk in this one just isn't cutting it for Jack's stuff." He didn't look up from his screen. "And you're telling me this why? Planning to make me pay for it?" "No, I've got it covered. I've been saving up from trading," I replied, trying to keep my voice even. That got his attention. His eyes narrowed as he put down his phone. "Oh, you've got money, huh? Well, that's great because I need some cash. The business could use a boost right now." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Again with the money? What about the money I lent you before? You promised to pay that back, and you haven't. I need a car for Jack, not to sink more into your endless business needs. He shrugged, a smirk forming. Business is what keeps us living in style, Sarah. You should know that by now. Help me out, and I'll get you a new car later. I stood my ground this time. No, Michael. No more. I need to take care of our son. I'm buying the car with or without your help. For a moment, he looked shocked, like he couldn't believe I was defying him. Then his expression hardened. Fine. How about this? If you're so set on this path, maybe we shouldn't be together. You want to split? Because trust me, you won't get a dime in the divorce. Remember that prenup you signed? His words were like a slap. I knew the prenup was there, but his threat to use it so bluntly was still a shock. If that's how you see our marriage, then maybe a divorce is the best thing, I said quietly, the reality of our crumbling relationship hitting me all at once. Fine by me. But remember, you leave with what you came with, nothing. And you'll need to find a new place to live. Consider this your 3-day notice, he said coldly, pulling out a drawer and tossing the prenuptial agreement on the table between us. I glanced at the document, the unfairness of it all burning in my chest. You think you can just throw me and Jack out like we're nothing? I've been here through everything, supporting you, never asking for anything more than what I put into this family. He laughed, a harsh sound that echoed in the empty room. You think any of that matters? I've got the best lawyers. Don't try to fight me, Sarah. You'll lose. And don't think about taking anything from here, or I'll sue. Packing was a blur of tears and determination. I collected mine and Jack's belongings, leaving behind everything that Michael could claim as his. I wasn't going to give him any reason to come after me legally. The apartment I found was small, but it was ours, and it was close to Jack's kindergarten, which made life a little easier. Every day, as I walked him to school, I felt a bit more grounded, a bit more like I could do this, raise my son and rebuild our lives. The stock market became my sanctuary and my battlefield. I traded with a ferocity born of necessity, the need to provide for Jack and keep us afloat without any help from Michael. Nights were the hardest, after Jack went to bed and the world quieted down. That's when the doubts and the loneliness crept in. But every time I wanted to give in to despair, I'd look at the numbers climbing in my account, and I'd find the strength to keep pushing. Divorce proceedings were as cold and swift as Michael's farewell. The prenuptial agreement held up, leaving me with nothing but child support, which was a pittance compared to what Michael made. He fought dirty, too, throwing around threats to take Jack if I pushed for any of the money I'd lent him for that so-called urgent loan. It was during one of those mornings, dropping Jack off at kindergarten, that I met Laura. She was the mother of Emily, a little girl with a wild mop of curls and a laugh that could light up a room. Laura and I hit it off immediately, often finding ourselves chatting long after the kids had scampered off to their morning activities. One sunny afternoon, as we watched our kids play, Laura turned to me, her expression curious. You always seem so together, Sarah. How do you do it? I mean, I struggle, and it's just me. I shrugged, my eyes on Jack, who was busy constructing a sandcastle. I guess you just learn to cope, you know? Keep pushing through. We talk about everything and nothing, movies, books, our wild dreams of vacations in exotic places. But I never brought up Michael or the divorce. That part of my life was locked away, a chapter 1 was determined to close. One day, as we watched Jack and Emily scramble up the steps of a slide, Laura nudged me gently. You know, if you ever need to talk about anything, I'm here. Us single moms have to stick together. I smiled, the warmth from her offer spreading through me. Thanks, Laura. That means a lot. After a particularly good day on the stock exchange, I felt a rare surge of optimism. Maybe it was the adrenaline from the win, or maybe I just needed a change of scenery from the usual routine. Whatever it was, I called up Laura and suggested dinner at a new restaurant downtown. Sounds like a celebration is in order. What's the occasion?" Laura asked as we settled into our seats at the chic, softly lit venue. "Just a good day at work," I replied, trying to keep it casual, but inside I was buzzing. It felt like things were finally looking up. As we sipped on our drinks and chatted about mundane things like kindergarten antics and weekend plans, I felt the weight of the past months lighten a bit. But just as I was beginning to relax, a familiar voice chilled the air around us. Well, if it isn't Sarah. Looking a bit rough, aren't we?" Michael's voice was unmistakable. I looked up to see him standing there, smirking, with a woman clinging to his arm. I felt my face flush, a mix of embarrassment and anger. "Michael," I greeted stiffly, wishing the earth would swallow me whole. "And this is Vanessa, my fiancée. Isn't she just stunning?" Vanessa gave a tight-lipped smile, eyeing me up and down with thinly veiled disdain. Yes, Michael always did have a taste for, well, never mind. "Nice to meet you, Sarah." Michael leaned in, lowering his voice, though not his malice. "Seriously, Sarah, you look like you've aged a decade. What happened to you?" I remained silent, not trusting myself to speak without my voice shaking. Laura, however, was not about to let it slide. "Sarah's doing just fine, better even. Looks to me like life's treating her well." Michael snorted, giving me a final sneering look before turning away. "Come on, Vanessa, let's leave the past where it belongs." After they left, Laura turned to me, her expression a mix of concern and anger. "What was that all about? He's awful. And who talks like that?" Taking a deep breath, I filled her in on the brief version of my marriage, the high hopes, the prenup, the threats, the fallout. Everything spilled out in a low, hurried stream. Laura's eyes widened with every detail. "Sarah, why didn't you tell me you were dealing with all that? And a prenup?" "I'm a family lawyer, you know. I want to see that prenup. There could be something there, some way to challenge it." A few days later, I was in Laura's office, handing over the dusty documents that had sealed my fate. She pored over them with a furrowed brow, her pen flying over the pages as she made notes. "Sarah, there are several issues here," she finally said, looking up from the papers. "First, this was signed too close to the wedding. It's a pressure tactic. Second, you didn't have independent legal advice, which is huge. And third, he didn't disclose all his financial obligations, like that loan you ended up covering. That's misrepresentation." My heart raced as she laid out each point. "It means," Laura continued with a smile, "that we might just be able to challenge this. We've got a real shot here, Sarah." Sitting in the cold, stark courtroom, my hands were trembling, despite my best efforts to appear calm. The weight of what was at stake pressed heavily upon me, not just the potential financial outcome, but the deeper, more personal vindication against Michael's long-standing control and threats. Before the judge had even called the session to order, Michael leaned towards me from where he stood a few paces away. His voice was low, a venomous whisper meant only for me. "You're a loser, Sarah. You can never beat me. I'll ruin you. And when I'm done, I'll take Jack from you too." Laura, standing by my side, gave my hand a quick, reassuring squeeze before we were called to present our case. As the proceedings began, Laura was methodical and fierce. She laid out the facts, pointing to the rushed nature of the prenuptial agreement signing and the glaring lack of independent legal counsel. She highlighted the financial disclosures that Michael had conveniently omitted, which directly impacted the terms of the prenup. "Your Honor, the agreement my client was coerced into signing was not only unfair but fundamentally flawed in its execution," Laura argued passionately. "We have clear grounds here to question its validity." Michael's lawyer tried to counter, arguing that everything had been above board, that I was merely having regrets after the fact. But Laura dismantled his points with precise legal references and the undeniable weight of evidence she'd compiled. After what felt like an eternity, the judge finally spoke. "After reviewing the evidence and the circumstances under which the prenuptial agreement was signed, I am ruling to annul the agreement due to significant violations in its execution." The courtroom seemed to spin for a moment. Laura turned to me, a triumphant smile spreading across her face. "We did it, Sarah," she whispered. Michael's reaction was instantaneous. His face turned a shade of red I'd never seen before as he stood up, his chair clattering behind him. "This isn't over. You won't get a dime from me," he shouted, his voice echoing off the high ceilings. The judge warned him to settle down, but Michael's fury was palpable. As we left the courthouse, he followed, his threats spewing out like venom. I turned on my dictaphone and let it record every bitter word, every promise of revenge. "You'll regret this, Sarah. I'll make sure of it," he hissed as we walked down the courthouse steps. Later, at the police station, I played the recording. An officer took notes, his expression growing increasingly concerned with each threat uttered. "We'll give him a warning. He's not to contact you or approach you. Any further incidents, and we'll take more serious action," he promised. As I left the police station, the legal documents confirming my ownership of 2 city center apartments and several commercial properties securely in my bag, I felt a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. Over $2 million in assets, it was almost impossible to comprehend. But more than the financial security, it was the freedom from Michael's shadow that felt like my true victory. The passive income from renting out real estate was more than enough to provide for Jack and me, and it allowed me to cut back on the frantic trading that had consumed so much of my time. These days, I spend a lot more time with Jack. He's growing up fast, and every moment with him feels precious. We often visit the park, and I watch him play, his laughter mingling with the breeze. One sunny afternoon, as Jack played on the swings, Laura joined us, her daughter Emily in tow. She plopped down on the bench next to me, a smile spreading across her face. "You look good, Sarah. Really good. Like a weight's been lifted," she observed, handing me a cup of coffee she'd picked up on her way. "Thanks, Laura. It feels that way, too," I replied, taking a grateful sip of the coffee. "I'm thinking about buying a house, a real home for Jack and me. Something with a garden, maybe even a place for a dog." As we talked, the conversation shifted to Michael and how dramatically things had changed. Laura kept up with the legal community grapevine, which had plenty to say about my ex-husband's downfall. Word is, Michael's not doing so well. His new fiancée, Vanessa, left him, and a lot of his business partners have pulled back. They don't want to be associated with his reputation after the trial, Laura said, not hiding her disdain. I nodded, not surprised, but relieved I was no longer part of that drama. "I heard about Vanessa. Can't say I'm surprised she didn't stick around. Michael's true colors are hard to live with." The idea of Michael's downfall didn't bring me joy, but there was a sense of justice in seeing someone who had done so much harm finally face the consequences of his actions. I was just glad to be out of the storm and into calmer waters. Our conversation drifted to lighter topics, upcoming school events, vacation plans, and community activities. Normal life stuff, the kind I had longed for during all those tumultuous years. Later that day, after Emily and Laura had left, Jack and I walked home, his small hand in mine. "Mom, can we really get a dog?" he asked, his eyes wide with hope. "Yeah, buddy, we can." I smiled down at him. "We'll have a big yard for him to play in, and you can help pick him out." Jack's excitement was infectious, and as we talked about what kind of dog we might get, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for the new life we were able to build. It was a far cry from the uncertainty and strife of the past years. I no longer looked over my shoulder, worried about what Michael might do next. Instead, I looked forward, to house viewings, to Jack's laughter filling a home that was truly ours, to new memories made in a garden under the sun, and to the simple joy of picking out our new dog. Today was my 35th birthday. I woke up feeling the usual aches and pains that came with my chronic illness, a constant companion since childhood. As the CEO of a thriving tech startup, I usually masked my pain with work and caffeine, but not today. Today felt different, heavier somehow. I decided a trip to the private clinic was necessary, a place I've come to view almost as a second home. I knew most of the staff by name, but it was Tom, the young nurse, who always caught my attention. Tom was charming, with a quick smile that made many of the patients blush, myself included. He was also persistent. Today, when I walked through the clinic's doors, he was the first to greet me. "Happy birthday, Elena, looking sharp as always," he grinned, his eyes lighting up as he approached me. "You know, you don't have to go through this alone. I'm here, you know." I sighed, settling onto the clinic bed. "Appreciate it, Tom, but you know my situation. It's complicated." As Tom prepared the drip, he didn't miss a beat. "I don't care about your illness, Elena. I like you. Whenever you're ready to talk about us, I'm here." As Tom busied himself with the charts, I tried to focus on the positives. I was successful, I was independent, but as much as I hated to admit it, I was lonely too. The day dragged on with the usual rounds of tests and doctor's visits. By late afternoon, I was ready to head back home, but Tom had other ideas. "Hey, birthday girl, you can't just go home and mope. Let's grab dinner, my treat. Let's celebrate you," he insisted. I hesitated. It was tempting to spend more time with him outside the sterile clinic walls. "Okay, but just as friends." "Just as friends," he agreed, but the twinkle in his eye said more. Dinner with Tom was easy and filled with laughter. He had a way of making me forget about the clinical coldness of my routine. As we talked, it wasn't just about my health or the clinic, it was about movies, travel, and food. It was normal, and for a moment, I let myself enjoy it. "Elena, you're incredible, you know that?" Tom said as he walked me to my car afterward. "Listen, I meant what I said earlier. I want to be there for you, in whatever way you let me." I looked up at him, the streetlights casting shadows across his earnest face. "Tom, it's not that simple. My life, my health, it's a lot for anyone to handle." "I'm not just anyone, Elena. I'm the guy who's asking you to take a chance on me," he replied, his voice steady and sure. I felt a rush of emotions. Here was this wonderful man, willing to accept me with all my complications. "Let's take it slow, okay?" As I drove home, his invitation replayed in my mind. Maybe, just maybe, I could let myself have this slice of happiness. After all, wasn't life too short to spend alone? 6 months flew by faster than I could have imagined. Tom and I were seeing each other regularly, and every moment spent together seemed to ease the constant discomfort of my illness. He made everything feel simpler, lighter. Yet, beneath the surface, I harbored reservations about our future given my health, but Tom never seemed to waver. One crisp Saturday evening, as the autumn leaves painted the city in hues of orange and red, Tom suggested a walk through the park after dinner. "Elena, you know I'm not much for fancy speeches, right?" Tom started, his voice a bit shaky, which was unlike him. "I've been thinking a lot about us, about how happy you make me. I want this to be a forever thing." I felt my heart skip a beat. "Tom, are you sure? You know my situation. It's not going to get any easier." "Yeah, I know. And I don't care. I want all of it, the good days, the bad days, and everything in between." He then took a small box out of his pocket and opened it to reveal a simple, yet beautiful ring. "Elena, will you marry me?" The proposal caught me off guard. I knew I loved him, but commitment at this level was something I hadn't allowed myself to consider seriously because of my health complications. Seeing him there, so sure of us, made all my defenses start to crumble. "Yes, Tom. Yes, I'll marry you." We embraced, and for a moment, the world around us seemed to disappear. It was just us, and it felt right. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of planning. We decided on a small ceremony, nothing fancy, just us and a few close friends, including his sister and her husband. But before any of that, I needed to address the practicalities of our future together. Sitting down with Tom one evening, I brought out the prenuptial agreement I had drawn up. "I want to talk about something a bit, well, practical. It's important, given my business and my health." Tom nodded. "Anything, Elena." I handed him the papers. It's a prenup. He took the documents, scanning them briefly before looking up at me with a smile. If that makes you feel secure, I'm okay with it. I'm not here for the money, Elena. I'm here for you. And you're sure? You're really sure about this? I pressed, needing to hear it just one more time. Absolutely, he assured me, signing the document without a second thought. Now, can we go back to planning our tiny wedding? Yeah, we can, I replied, feeling a mixture of relief and love. Tom's easy acceptance of the prenup reassured me of his intentions and commitment. Our wedding day was simple and perfect. The city hall ceremony was quick, and the only people present were those we loved most. Standing there, exchanging vows with Tom, I felt a surge of hope. Maybe, just maybe, life was giving me a chance to have something beautiful, despite everything. Life after our quiet little wedding was, for a while, pretty close to what I'd imagined as perfect. Tom and I settled into our new life together, and he took over running the household. It was a nice change. I'd come home to incredible smells wafting from the kitchen, and the place looked spotless. The first few months felt like we were in some sort of honeymoon phase that just kept going. But about a year in, things started to change subtly. I noticed that Tom seemed a bit off. His enthusiasm for things around the house began to wane, and he seemed more withdrawn. At first, I chalked it up to the adjustment of living together or the end of the honeymoon phase, but the shift was palpable. One day, I came home early to surprise him with news about a potential new client for my business. I walked in, expecting to find him bustling around in the kitchen or maybe sorting out the laundry. Instead, the house was quiet, too quiet. Puzzled, I walked towards the kitchen, and that's when I heard it, voice. I paused by the door, listening. A woman's voice, cheerful and unfamiliar, chatting away as if she owned the place. Pushing the door open, I saw a middle-aged woman, humming as she chopped vegetables. She looked up, startled. Oh, you must be Elena. I'm June. Tom didn't say you'd be home this early. June? And who exactly are you? I managed to keep my voice steady, despite the shock. I'm the housekeeper. Tom hired me about a year ago. I come in a few times a week to clean up and cook. Makes things easier, you know? She smiled, clearly unaware of the bomb she'd just dropped. A housekeeper? For a year? And I had no clue? I felt a mix of anger and betrayal boiling inside me, but I kept it together. Right, I see. Thanks, June. Would you mind giving us a moment? Of course. She wiped her hands and left the room. When Tom came home, he found me sitting in the living room, still processing everything. His face fell the moment he saw my expression. Who's June, Tom? I asked bluntly. Tom hesitated, then sighed. She's the housekeeper. Look, I meant to tell you, but I thought you'd be upset about me not doing the stuff around the house myself. Upset? Tom, you think I'd be upset about who cleans or cooks? I'm upset because you lied, because you thought this was something you had to hide. My voice rose with every word. I know, and I'm sorry. It started small, and then I just didn't know how to bring it up without making it a big deal. It seemed easier to just keep it going. He tried to explain, looking genuinely remorseful. Easier for who, Tom? Because this doesn't feel easy for me. I shot back. We talked it out that night. He apologized, and I tried to understand his perspective. But something had shifted between us, a small crack that made me wonder what else he might not be telling me. Things smoothed over a bit after that, but the seed of doubt had been planted. Tom continued to be great at making dinner and keeping the house in order, but now I knew he wasn't the one actually doing all the work. It felt like our roles were clear. I worked, and he managed the home, except he didn't really manage it, he outsourced it. And yet something about Tom's behavior was off, and it wasn't just the hidden housekeeper issue. His late-night whispers on the phone, his sudden need for privacy, and his constant excuses for needing more money, it all added up to something sinister. So, I did what any self-respecting woman with my resources would do. I hired a private detective. It wasn't long before the detective came back with news, and it wasn't the kind I'd hoped for. Tom was spending most of his days at a casino, and the sums of money he was losing were staggering. I felt a mix of relief and despair, relief that there wasn't another woman, but despair at the size of his deception. That evening, when Tom came home, I was waiting for him in the living room, the detective's report in hand. He tried to kiss me hello, but I stepped back, holding up the papers. "Care to explain this?" I asked, my voice cold and more composed than I felt. Tom sank down onto the sofa, burying his face in his hands. "I didn't mean for it to get this out of hand. It started small, just a way to blow off some steam. But it got bigger, and I didn't know how to stop." "And you thought the best way to deal with it was to lie to me? To steal from me?" My voice was rising now, my temper flaring. "I'm sorry, Elena. I'm so sorry. I need help. I want to quit, I swear. I need your help to get out of this mess." His voice was desperate, pleading. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm inside me. "I'll help you, Tom, but this is the last time. You need to get treatment for your addiction, and you're going to sign a receipt acknowledging the debt I'm paying off. It's $50,000, Tom." $50,000? Tom nodded miserably. "Yes, anything you say. I'll do it. I'll get help." We arranged for him to start treatment the following week. But just when I thought we might be finding our way back to some sort of normalcy, Tom dropped another bombshell. Out of the blue, he said, "Elena, I've been thinking, maybe we should have a baby. It might bring us closer." I stared at him, incredulous. "A baby? Tom, you know I can't. It's not just risky, it could be fatal for me." He quickly tried to backpedal. I know. I just thought, never mind." But the idea didn't go away. It kept coming up, more and more. Even his sister, an obstetrician, called me about it. "You should reconsider, Elena. Having a baby is the most natural thing. Don't be selfish." "Selfish? You're a doctor. You know my condition. How can you even suggest such a thing?" I was furious. She scoffed and hung up on me. The conversation left me shaken. How could they be so callous, so cruel? Months of tension and unresolved arguments had frayed my nerves, but nothing could have prepared me for the scene I walked into that fateful day. I returned home earlier than usual, my steps quickening with the anticipation of a quiet evening. Instead, I opened the door to chaos, boxes piled up, and Tom's sister, Lisa, and her husband, Mark, arranging their belongings around my living room. "What the hell is going on here?" I demanded, my voice cutting through the noise. Lisa turned to face me, an unnerving calmness to her demeanor. "Oh, we're moving in, Elena. This is Tom's place, and you should really start packing your things." My eyes flicked to Tom, searching for some sign of confusion or disagreement on his face, but there was none. Instead, he met my gaze with a look that chilled me to the bone. "Elena, I can't do this anymore. You've been manipulating and controlling me for years. It's over," Tom declared, his voice cold and distant. I stared at him, dumbfounded. "Manipulating you? Tom, what are you talking about?" "You heard him," Mark chimed in, his voice just as harsh. "He's done being your slave." Tom stepped forward, a stack of papers in hand. "Here are the divorce papers. I'm also filing for compensation for years of emotional abuse and alimony. I need to look after my well-being now." The room spun as I took the papers from his hand. This was a nightmare. I glanced through the documents, each word a betrayal. But rising panic gave way to a steely calm. I let out a laugh, short and devoid of humor. "Well, you're in for a surprise. But go on, think what you want. You'll be hearing from my lawyer." Without another word, I went to our bedroom, packed a suitcase with essentials, and prepared to leave. There was no point in arguing. The man I had married, the man I thought I knew, was gone. I drove away from the apartment and headed toward the elite cottage village where I had a house waiting, a home that was truly mine, bought long before Tom entered my life. As I passed the familiar gates and nodded to the guards, a weight lifted off my shoulders. The house was exactly as I left it, spacious, quiet, and tailored to my needs. It had always been my sanctuary, a place I had prepared for my future, knowing my health might take a turn for the worse. As night fell, I made a few phone calls, informing my closest friends of the situation and reassuring them I was okay. My lawyer was up next, ready to discuss our strategy. Tom and his outrageous claims would not go unchallenged. A few days after settling into my sanctuary, I was startled by a frantic call from Tom. His voice, laced with panic and fury, blared through the phone. "Elena, you've set me up. This is some kind of sick game to you, isn't it?" Calmly, with a small smile, I replied, "Tom, if you think there's been a misunderstanding, why don't you come over and we'll talk about it? I'll send you the address." Soon after, the village gates swung open, and Tom, alongside Lisa and her husband Mark, drove through. I watched from the window as their car pulled up, their faces pressed against the car windows, eyes wide as they took in the view of my expansive home. They approached my front door, still gaping at the luxurious setting, their previous bravado seeming to shrink a bit. As I opened the door, I couldn't help but cough to clear the silence, then offered a wry smile. "Well, what brings you to my humble abode?" Tom, regaining some of his earlier fire, blurted out, "Your lawyer called me. He said I have to pay next month's rent for the apartment, $6,000. You never told me it wasn't your apartment. You never asked about it, and if you want to live in this apartment, pay the rent," I explained with deliberate patience. Lisa, ever the opportunist, chimed in, elbowing Tom. "And what about this place? It's gorgeous." Tom nodded vigorously. "Yeah, why don't you just give us this house instead of that apartment? Otherwise, we'll sue you for everything you've got." Their audacity was almost comical. I couldn't help but burst into laughter. "You want to sue me for this house? Tom, dear, I bought this house long before you were in the picture. You have no claim over it whatsoever." Their faces turned red with frustration, and the shouting escalated. "You can't just kick us out. We have rights," Tom yelled. "That's where you're wrong," I replied, my voice firm as I picked up the phone. "Security, could you please escort these people out? They seem to be lost." Within minutes, the village security arrived, and the trio was promptly shown out. As they were escorted away, their indignant protests faded into the distance, leaving behind a quiet that settled over the house like a comforting blanket. After they left, I sat back down, the laughter gone, replaced by a weary sigh. It was clear that Tom and his sister were grasping at straws, trying to intimidate me into giving up what was rightfully mine. I called my lawyer again, going over the details of the day's confrontation. "We need to be prepared for whatever they might try next," I told him, my tone resolute. "Don't worry, Elena. We'll handle this. They have no legal standing," he reassured me. The day of the court hearing arrived with a tension thick enough to slice through. I walked into the courtroom, my lawyer at my side, ready to face whatever Tom and his family had concocted. The allegations were ludicrous. Tom claimed that I had exploited him, turning him into what he dramatically referred to as my slave. He recounted stories of endless chores and a thankless life under my supposed tyranny, all while his sister Lisa and her husband Mark nodded vigorously, echoing his every word. I resisted the urge to roll my eyes. Luckily, it was soon our turn to present the reality of the situation. My lawyer stood, adjusting his suit jacket with a calm assurance. "Your Honor, we have evidence that contradicts every single one of Mr. Thomas's claims," he stated confidently, then turned to call our first witness. The au pair Tom had hired, June, came forward. I worked in their home, doing all the household chores and cooking. Mr. Thomas Elliot hardly lifted a finger. She testified, her statement backed by employment records and salary slips proving Tom hardly contributed to the household work as he claimed. After June's testimony, my lawyer presented the prenuptial agreement. As per this legally binding document, signed by both parties, he continued, pointing to the signatures at the bottom of the page. It clearly states that in the event of a divorce, Mr. Elliot is entitled to nothing. No alimony, no compensation. The courtroom was silent as the weight of the document sank in. Tom's face drained of color when my lawyer added, "Mr. Elliott, did you read this document before you signed it?" Tom stuttered. "Well, I saw the part about if something happened to Elena, but you didn't read it all. Is that correct?" my lawyer pressed. "Yes, but I didn't think." "You didn't think to read what you were signing," my lawyer cut him off, turning back to the judge. "Your Honor, we also wish to present proof of Mr. Elliott gambling debts, which Mrs. Elliott generously cleared, and for which we have a signed acknowledgement from Mr. Elliott himself." I watched as Tom slumped in his seat, the reality of his situation finally hitting him. When the judge finally spoke, her voice was clear and firm. "After reviewing the evidence and hearing the testimonies, it is this court's decision to grant the divorce requested by Mrs. Elena Elliott. Furthermore, all claims for compensation and alimony by Mr. Thomas Elliott are denied." As we walked out of the courtroom, a sense of profound relief washed over me. But that relief was quickly overshadowed by the spectacle outside the courtroom. Lisa was furiously berating Tom, her words sharp and unforgiving. "You fool. All you had to do was get her pregnant and died, then we could have had everything. You couldn't even do that right." I stopped for a moment to take in the scene, the reality of their treachery settling in deeper. They hadn't just wanted money, they had hoped for my demise. Months had passed since the courtroom drama had unfolded, and I had slowly begun to reclaim my peace, focusing on my health and my business. One crisp morning, as I sipped my coffee and reviewed some business reports, the serenity was abruptly disrupted by an unexpected visitor. I glanced at the security monitor and saw Tom, looking disheveled and desperate, at the gates of my village. I instructed the guards to let him in, curious yet cautious about his sudden appearance. As he approached the front door, I could see the strain in his face, the weight of his recent hardships etched into his features. He fell to his knees as soon as I opened the door, an act so dramatic it almost seemed rehearsed. "Elena, please, I'm begging you, take me back. I'll do anything. I'll cook, clean, anything you want. Just let me stay here," he pleaded, his voice breaking. I stared down at him, my expression calm yet firm. "Tom, after everything, why would you think I'd ever consider such a thing? It wasn't all my idea, Elena. It was Lisa's plan to push for the baby, to end things that way. I never wanted any of it to happen. I swear, I was just caught up in it," he blurted out, desperation seeping through his every word. I took a deep breath, keeping my composure. "Tom, what you're failing to understand is that it's not just about what happened, or who planned what. It's about trust. And you broke that beyond repair. You didn't just follow Lisa's plans, you stood by her knowing full well how dangerous her schemes were for me." He scrambled to his feet, reaching out as if he could physically pull back the relationship we once had. "Elena, I'm lost without you. I've taken out a loan to pay back the $50,000, and I've started working again. I'm trying to fix my mistakes." "Fixing your mistakes doesn't mean you get to rewind and erase the consequences," I replied sharply. "What you need to understand, Tom, is that you chose this path. Now you must walk it alone." His face crumpled, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for him, almost. But then I remembered the cold, calculating discussions about my health and potential demise. "I want you to leave. Now," I said, my voice unwavering. "And Tom, don't come back. You are not welcome here, not now, not ever." When he hesitated, still trying to muster another plea, I turned and signaled to the security personnel who had discreetly remained close by. They stepped forward, escorting him away as he called out my name, his cries fading into the distance. After he was gone, I stood at the doorway for a few moments, letting the silence wash over me again. This house, this life, I had built it, and I would not let anyone disrupt it again. I returned to my morning routine, the disturbance now settling into a resolved chapter of my life. Looking ahead, my thoughts turned to future plans, the dreams of travel and meeting new people. The world was wide, and my heart, once burdened by betrayal, now felt lighter with possibilities. I came into this world not with a cheer, but a burden. My mother, Elizabeth, wasn't ready for me, or maybe she just never wanted to be. It's hard to tell the difference when you're the unwanted one. From my first breath, I was more a problem than a person in her eyes. "You never stop crying, do you?" she would hiss during those long nights of my infancy. Her voice was often laced with irritation, lacking the gentle touch you'd expect from a mother. My father, Michael, was different. He was the one who stepped up, trading sleep for soothing walks with me in his arms, while my mother locked herself away in silence. "Let me take her, Liz," I remember him pleading one night, his voice as soft as the blankets he wrapped me in. "You need to rest." As I grew, the gap between my mother's affection and indifference widened, especially when Emily was born. Suddenly, there was light in my mother's eyes, but it wasn't for me. "Look at her, Michael. She's perfect," Mom cooed over Emily, something I never heard directed at me. The differences were stark. While Emily slept quietly in her arms, I was often left playing alone or trying to help around the house. "Why don't you be a good big sister and play quietly? Emily is sleeping," Mom would often chide when my footsteps or small voice crept a decibel too high. My role in the house grew as I got older. I wasn't just the elder sister, I was the helper, the cook, the cleaner, whatever kept me busy and out of the way. As time went on, I learned the art of invisibility at home. It was easier to blend into the background, to anticipate needs before they were spoken. By the time high school rolled around, I was more the family caretaker than their child. "Anna, make sure the laundry's done and dinner's ready by 6, Mom would command as she left with Emily for another shopping trip, their laughter a bitter sound as it faded down the hallway. "Yes, Mom," was always my reply, mechanical, rehearsed. At school, things were different. I was a good student, quiet but diligent. Teachers noticed me, praised me, something that never happened at home. They encouraged me, talked about potential and futures that seemed so distant from my reality. "Have you thought about college, Anna?" Mr. Henderson, my English teacher, once asked. His encouragement felt like a lifeline. "I'd like to, sir. I really would," I admitted, a flicker of hope stirring within. Those moments, rare and precious, were what fueled me. They made the long days and lonely nights bearable. They whispered of a life beyond the confines of my mother's cold indifference and the shadow of my sister's favored existence. A life where maybe, just maybe, I could be seen for who I was, not just for what I could do for others. By the time I graduated high school, I had my plan all mapped out. It wasn't anything fancy, just a simple escape from a home that felt more like a prison. The day I turned 18, I packed my bags, mostly filled with second-hand clothes and a few cherished books. "You really going through with this?" Dad asked, his face lined with worry as he watched me stuff a duffel bag. "Your mom's gonna flip, you know. She expects you to stick around, help out with the house, with Emily." I zipped up the bag with more force than necessary. "I know. But I can't stay here, Dad. I gotta try and make something of myself." I moved into a tiny apartment on the edge of town, close enough to my new job at a local diner. The work was hard and the hours were long, but every paycheck was a step closer to my goal. The diner was a noisy, bustling place, filled with the clatter of dishes and the constant chatter of customers. I learned to keep my head down and my hands busy. Nights were spent in a cramped study corner of my apartment, textbooks spread out as I worked through community college applications. I was determined to be more than a waitress, more than what my mother said I'd be. "Why you both airin' with all that school stuff?" my neighbor, Jo, once asked when she caught me buried in paperwork. "Ain't like it's gonna change much." "It might not," I admitted, "but it's worth a shot. I want to be a teacher, Jo. I want to do something meaningful." Jo snorted, dragging on her cigarette. "Well, good luck with that, kid. This world ain't kind to dreamers." Saving money became a game of numbers. Every tip went into a jar, every spare dollar tucked away for future tuition. I cut corners everywhere, lived on ramen and toast, and kept my eyes on the prize. After a year of relentless work and study, I had enough to enroll in college. I chose the local community college, affordable and within commuting distance. The day I received my acceptance letter, I felt a surge of pride like never before. Walking into my first class, I felt out of place with my worn-out jeans and second-hand textbooks, but I was there, in a seat, ready to learn. "You here for the early childhood education program?" A girl next to me asked, her pen tapping nervously on her notebook. "I'm Sarah. We should study together, maybe?" "Sure, Sarah. I'm Anna. I'd like that." College was a whole new world, one where I wasn't just the forgotten daughter or the hard-working waitress. I was a student, a peer, and soon, I found myself part of a community. Evenings were still spent at the diner, but now my days were filled with lectures, group projects, and a growing belief that I could really make this happen. I could become someone who made a difference. The path wasn't easy. There were moments of doubt, of fear that maybe Joe was right, that maybe the world wasn't kind to dreamers. But every time I helped a classmate understand a tough concept, or received praise from a professor, I knew I was where I was supposed to be. By the time my second year of college rolled around, I was deep into my studies and working the evening shift at the diner. One evening, as I balanced a tray full of burgers and shakes, my phone buzzed in my apron. It was an email from the college financial office. My heart skipped. This was it, the scholarship decision. I waited until my break, hands shaking as I logged in to read the email. "Congratulations," it began. "We are pleased to inform you." I didn't need to read the rest, I had done it. A full ride for the next year. I let out a breath I didn't even know I was holding and slid down against the wall, relief washing over me. The following weeks flew by in a blur of exams and late-night shifts. But with my financial worries eased, I was able to focus more on what I really loved, learning how to teach. As the semester ended, I started applying for teaching positions, each application sent with a mix of hope and nerves. One afternoon, while I was setting up for a job fair, my old classmate, Sarah, bumped into me. "Listen, are you still looking for a job? My aunt's school is looking for a new primary teacher. You should totally apply." I followed up on Sarah's tip and landed an interview. The night before, I practiced answers to possible questions in front of my mirror, determined to come off as confident and competent. The principal, Mr. Davis, was a stern-looking man who softened a bit as we talked. "Why do you want to work with children?" he asked, peering at me over his glasses. "Because I believe every child deserves a champion, an adult who will never give up on them, who understands the power of connection and insists they become the best they can possibly be." I walked out of there feeling like I had just won my second scholarship. A week later, I got the call. I was in. I was going to be a teacher. After years of working tirelessly as a teacher and constantly hitting the books at night to stay ahead, I decided it was high time to invest in a proper laptop. Walking into the tech store, I was more than a little out of my element. Rows of shiny, high-tech gadgets lined the walls, each one promising the world. I must have looked lost because a guy with a friendly smile and a name tag that read Tom approached me. "Need some help finding something?" he asked, his tone friendly. "Yeah, I'm looking for a laptop that can handle a lot of multitasking and won't give up on me in a year," I replied, hoping I sounded like I knew what I was talking about. Tom nodded, showing me a few models and explaining the specs in a way that didn't go right over my head. "This one here would be perfect for what you need, and it's within budget." As he rang up the sale, he gave a casual, "You seem really into your work. If you ever need tech advice, or any advice, really, here's my number." We started texting, casual at first, then daily. Dates followed, easy nights out where the laughter flowed as freely as the conversation. But whenever things edged towards serious, Tom was quick with the brakes. "We're still young, Anna. There's no rush," he'd say, every time I hinted at something deeper. I didn't push it. I was busy enough, and having someone even just to laugh with felt like a win. But then, one lazy Saturday morning, as I was enjoying my coffee and the rare chance to sleep in, my phone rang. It was Mom, which was unusual enough to spike my heartbeat. "Anna, it's your dad. He's really sick. You should come." The weight in her voice pulled me upright. "I'm on my way." Tom, sprawled on the couch, sat up. "Everything okay?" "It's my dad. I have to go see him. He's sick." "I'll come with you," he offered, and something in his tone made it clear he wasn't asking. We drove in silence, the tension thick. As we pulled up to the family house, his whistle cut through the quiet. "Damn, Anna, you didn't say you grew up in a mansion." "It's not as glamorous as it looks," I murmured, my stomach knotting up as we walked to the door. Inside, Mom and Emily were the picture of superficial concern. I introduced Tom, their smiles a little too polished. "Nice to finally meet the man making our Anna so happy," Mom cooed, her eyes appraising. "We were just talking about the future," Emily chimed in, eyeing Tom like a new accessory she might like to try. I barely listened, my focus on getting to Dad. He was propped up in bed, looking so frail it knocked the breath from me. "Anna, my girl," he rasped as I approached. "I'm sorry for everything." Tears stung my eyes, but I managed a smile. "It's okay, Dad. I'm here now." "I should have been stronger. Should have stood up for you more," he continued, each word labored. We talked a little more until he drifted off, tired from the effort. I kissed his forehead and joined the others at dinner, Tom in tow. The conversation at the table turned quickly to money, inheritances, things that seemed so trivial with Dad's room just upstairs. "Your father's made some smart investments," Mom was saying, her voice light, almost excited. "It should keep us comfortable." "Yeah, I've been looking at trips to Europe," Emily added, like she was picking out items from a catalog. Tom listened, nodding along, but I felt sick. "Shouldn't we focus on Dad's health first?" I interjected, unable to keep the edge from my voice. "Oh, Anna, always so dramatic," Emily sighed. "We have to be practical about the future." I wanted to argue, to scream that they were talking about Dad like he was already gone. But I bit my tongue, the words tasting like bile. We drove back to my place, the city lights blurring past as I let the distance from that house, from those people, slowly help me breathe easier. Coming back from that unsettling dinner at my parents' place, Tom seemed more contemplative than usual. We'd barely closed the door to my apartment when he turned to me, his expression serious. "Anna, I've been thinking a lot lately," he began, running a hand through his hair. "Marry me, Anna." The proposal was as unexpected as a thunderclap in clear skies. "What? Tom, where is this coming from?" "I know it's sudden," he admitted, stepping closer. "But today, seeing everything. I just know I want to be there for you, for good. We don't need anything big, just us, together." His words, sincere and raw, cut through the confusion. I loved him, that much was clear. And maybe, just maybe, he was the solid thing I could hold on to. "Okay, yes," I said, the decision feeling right despite the chaos of my thoughts. We didn't wait. The very next week, we stood together at City Hall, exchanging simple vows in a quiet room. No frills, no grand speeches, just a promise to each other. But even the warmth of new marriage couldn't shield me from the concern for my father. His health was deteriorating, each visit painting a starker picture than the last. One afternoon, as I sat beside his bed, holding his hand while he dozed, he stirred and looked at me with a clarity that had become rare. "Anna," he murmured, squeezing my hand. "When I'm gone, there'll be something for you. A surprise." I brushed his hair back from his forehead, smiling to ease his worries. "Dad, don't talk like that. You need to focus on getting better." But he shook his head gently. "Just know that I did what I could." His words hung between us, heavy and somber. I chose not to press him, thinking it was the illness speaking, his mind fogged by medication and pain. Leaving his room that day felt harder than ever. At home, Tom tried to comfort me, but the image of my father's frail form haunted me. Meanwhile, Mom and Emily's conversations about the future grew more frequent and filled with cold calculations. One evening, I overheard them talking in the kitchen while I was supposed to be out. The medical bills are piling up, and with your father like this, well, it's not sustainable, Mom was saying, her voice laced with impatience. I've already signed up for plastic surgery to find a new boyfriend. Emily responded, her tone just as calculating. We need to think about what comes next. I want that new car that you and I saw in the salon. Frustrated and heartbroken, I left them to their scheming. Back at my place, Tom held me close as I cried, my tears for my father, for the family I wished I had. The day we buried my father was cold and gray, the sky mourning with us as friends and relatives came to pay their respects. That evening, the family gathered at my parents' house. The air was thick with tension, everyone too aware of the elephant in the room, the inheritance. I was emotionally drained and wanted nothing more than to honor my father's memory in peace, but that wasn't to be. Tom was the first to break the silence about the will. So, what's going to happen now with the inheritance? We need to know what we're dealing with here, he said, his tone a bit too casual for the occasion. I shot him a look, my heart sinking. Tom, can we not do this right now? Today isn't about money. But he pressed on, oblivious or indifferent to my discomfort. I'm just saying, it's important. I mean, shouldn't the house go to Anna? It's only fair. My mother, who had been quietly listening, laughed dryly. Fair? This house has always belonged to Emily and me. You two were just passing through. Tom's face hardened, and he turned to my sister. Emily, you know this isn't right. Anna deserves her share. Emily, looking more interested than she had all evening, fluttered her eyelashes at Tom. Oh, Tom, you always think of others. But Mom's right, as usual. The conversation spiraled, voices raised in a bitter symphony. I felt sick listening to them, the words melding into a cacophony of greed. How could a day of mourning turn so quickly into a scramble for wealth? As they argued, Tom's attitude shifted, his earlier support for me fading as he began to compliment Emily on her sensible outlook. Watching him sidle up to my sister, something in me snapped. I couldn't stomach another minute of it. I fled to my father's room, the one place that still held traces of his presence, and collapsed into a restless sleep. The next morning, I awoke to the smell of coffee and found Tom in the kitchen. His expression was grave, a stark contrast to the light banter of just days before. Anna, we need to talk, he began, avoiding my gaze. I'm in love with Emily. I think she and I have a future together. The room spun a little, his declaration landing like a physical blow. You're what? Tom, are you serious? Before he could answer, I called Emily and Mom to join us. Emily came down, looking smug, while Mom watched with a curious eye. I just wanted you to hear it from me first, Emily said, her tone infuriatingly calm. I'm a decent person, Anna. I didn't want to go behind your back. Mom nodded, her approval evident. It's very noble of you, Emily. To be so upfront about this. Their words, their betrayal, it was too much. I felt a cold, hard calm settle over me. You all deserve each other, I said quietly. Tom extended the divorce papers toward me, a pen poised. Without hesitation, I signed, each stroke of my name severing the ties that bound us. You'll get your things through a courier. Don't come back. With that, I walked out of the kitchen, out of the house, and didn't look back. I was free now, and with that freedom, a new path lay open. A path I would walk alone, but at least it was mine, honest and unencumbered. 2 weeks later, we all got back together in the notary's sterile office, about to hear the reading of my father's will. The air was tense, thick with unspoken accusations and bitter expectations. Mom and Emily were chatting in hushed, anxious tones, while Tom looked uncomfortable, shifting in his seat next to Emily. The notary, Mr. Clarkson, a severe-looking man with glasses perched on the tip of his nose, cleared his throat and began reading the will. I sat there, my hands folded in my lap, bracing for whatever came next. To my daughter Anna, Mr. Clarkson read, his voice neutral. I leave the sum of $400,000. The room went silent for a heartbeat before chaos erupted. Mom's face turned a shade of red I knew too well as her financial desperation spilled out. "I have debts, Anna. Your father knew. He promised he'd take care of us," she shrieked, her voice cracking under the strain. Emily joined in, her voice sharp and accusing. "And what about me? I'm getting married to Tom. We need that money for a proper wedding." "You don't need all that money, Anna." I stared at them, the sheer audacity rendering me momentarily speechless. Tom, meanwhile, tried to play the affection card, stepping toward me with open arms. "I've missed you, Anna. I've made a mistake. I only ever loved you." Before he could reach me, Emily yanked him back by the shirt, her eyes wide with betrayal. "Tom, what are you doing?" He tried to wriggle free from her grasp, but Emily's grip was tight, her nails practically digging into his skin. "Enough." Mr. Clarkson's voice boomed through the room, louder than I'd ever heard. "If you cannot behave in a civilized manner, I will have to ask you to leave. And if necessary, I will call the police." The threat of authority seemed to pierce through the chaos, bringing a sudden, sullen silence to the room. Mom and Emily, with crocodile tears streaming down their faces, turned to me once more. "Anna, please," my mother begged, her voice softening to a manipulative whisper. "Think of your family." Emily, still clinging to Tom, echoed her plea. "We're your family, Anna. Don't we mean anything to you?" Looking at them, at their false tears and desperate faces, something inside me hardened. These were not the actions of a family, they were the actions of vultures dressed in familiar skins. "No," I said firmly, my voice steady, despite the shaking of my hands. "This money is what Dad wanted me to have. He knew I would use it wisely, not squander it on debts or lavish weddings." Tom, Emily, and Mom stared back, a mixture of shock and indignation written across their faces. "You'll regret this, Anna. You won't be happy with this money," Mom hissed as I turned to leave. "Maybe," I replied, pausing at the door. "But I'd rather find that out on my own, without any of you." As I stepped into the sunlight, the cool air felt like the first breath of a new life, one where I was no longer bound by the toxic ties of those who shared my blood but not my values. I used the money to open a small private kindergarten. It was something I'd dreamed of, a place where children could feel loved and valued, the way I wished I had felt growing up. The process wasn't easy. There were permits to obtain, a property to renovate, curriculums to design, and staff to hire. But every step felt right. I named it Bright Beginnings, a nod to the new start it represented for me and the children we would serve. Business was good, better than I had hoped. Parents loved our approach, and word of mouth spread. Soon, we were at full capacity, and I began planning an expansion. One day, while reviewing blueprints with my assistant, Jenny, my phone buzzed with an update from a name I hadn't seen in a while, Rachel, a mutual acquaintance of my family. "Hey Anna, thought you should know, your mom and Emily sold the house. They had to move out of town, ended up in a small place. Not much left after settling their debts," she texted. I stared at the screen for a long moment. "Thanks for the update, Rachel," I typed back, a mix of emotions swirling through me. As the days turned into weeks, Bright Beginnings grew not just in size, but in reputation. It was during this busy time that Tom reappeared, as unexpectedly as he had exited my life. I was returning from a meeting when I found him standing outside my apartment, a huge bouquet in his hands and that same charming smile plastered on his face. "Anna, hey. I've been thinking about you," he said as I approached, trying to hand me the flowers. I stopped short, my keys in my hand, an incredulous laugh escaping me. "Really, Tom? After everything, you think flowers will fix it? Come on, Anna. I made a mistake. Can we talk?" His voice was coaxing, his smile faltering just a bit. I looked at him, really looked at him, and all I saw was the same selfishness, the same opportunism. "No, Tom. We can't. There's nothing for you here." He lingered for a moment, the smile finally slipping off his face as he realized I was serious. Then, with nowhere left to push, he turned and left, the discarded flowers lying wilted by my doorstep. The next few months flew by. Bright Beginnings became not just a daycare but a cornerstone of the community. We hosted family events, workshops for parents, and continued to expand our services. As I watched the children play in the newly added outdoor play area, their laughter ringing clear and true, I felt a sense of accomplishment and peace. I had built something lasting, something meaningful. My name's Erica. If you asked me how I started, I'd say with nothing fancy, just a girl from a regular family, with parents who loved me more than anything. My life was pretty standard until I hit college, where I met Jack. He was in the same restaurateur program, and man, did we click. We were both dreamers, aiming to carve out a little empire of our own. Ever think about opening your own place, Erica? Jack asked one night as we were cramming for finals over cheap coffee and day-old donuts. All the time, I admitted, not taking my eyes off the business plan spread across the table. Imagine a cozy little spot, authentic Italian, the kind of place where everyone feels like family. Jack grinned, his eyes lighting up. We could do it, you know. Run it together. What's stopping us? Money, I sighed, a laugh escaping despite the truth of it. Loads and loads of money. But life has a funny way of turning dreams into reality. When my parents passed away suddenly, a brutal car crash that took them too soon, they left me their house and a tidy sum of $400,000. After the grief, the silence of the house was overwhelming. It was Jack who stepped up. Let's do it, Erica. Let's make your dream come true. For you, for them, he said one evening as we sat in the quiet living room, surrounded by memories. Are you sure? I asked, feeling the weight of the decision. It's a huge risk. Jack took my hands in his. I'm in if you're in, all the way. With that, we got married right after graduation and poured every dime and ounce of energy into our first restaurant. I designed the interiors myself, choosing warm yellows and reds, and we both developed the menu, testing recipes until midnight most days. The first few years were tough, no lie. There were nights I fell into bed with my shoes still on, too tired to move. But seeing our dream take shape, watching the 3 restaurants flourish under our care, made every aching muscle worth it. Mom, why are you always at the restaurant? My son, Danny, asked one day. He was about 7, his face serious as only a kid's can be. Because it's our family's place, sweetheart. We built it so we could have a good life, you know? I explained as I tied my apron, preparing for another long shift. But you're always working, he pouted, and it stung because he was right. I know, kiddo. But I promise, we're doing this for us, for our future. One day, you'll see it was worth it, I said, kissing his forehead before rushing out the door, the bell jingling behind me. After years of what seemed like marital bliss and bustling restaurant nights, I started noticing the cracks. Jack and I weren't the dream team we used to be. He was pulling away, distant, like he was always somewhere else even when he was right there. It was a regular Tuesday evening, and I was doing the books in the office when Jack walked in, late again, his jacket slung carelessly over one shoulder. Jack, we need to talk about the Henderson event. They want to book the big room, and I can't make that call without you, I said, trying to catch his eye as he rifled through some mail. Yeah, sure, whatever you think is best, he muttered, not looking up. That was his new thing, agreeing without listening. It drove me nuts. Jack, I snapped, louder this time. This is important. Can you please focus? He finally looked at me, his eyes tired, or maybe just uninterested. Erica, I trust your judgment. Just handle it, okay? I've got a lot on my mind. That was another thing. What exactly was on his mind these days? I used to know every thought he had. Now? Not so much. One night, I just couldn't take the guessing games anymore. We were in bed, the only time we ever were in the same room it seemed, and I turned to him, my voice shaky but needing the truth. Jack, is there someone else? The words felt like broken glass coming out of my mouth. He was silent for a long moment, The kind of silence that tells you everything you don't want to hear. Yeah, there is, he said finally, his voice flat. No anger, no sorrow, just cold, hard fact. It just happened. We've changed. I've changed. You've changed. It's not just one thing. The next day was a blur. I moved through the motions at the restaurant, smiling at customers, checking on orders, all while feeling like I was outside my body, looking down at some stranger living my life. When I finally got home, Jack was there, sitting at the kitchen table with that look on his face, the one that used to mean he had something serious to say. Erica, I think we should talk about what this means for us, he said, as I dropped my keys on the counter, not ready to sit, not ready to hear it. What's there to talk about, Jack? You've made your choice, I said, my voice cold, steadier than I felt. We should get a divorce. There's nothing left to salvage. He didn't argue with that. Maybe he wanted to, or maybe he was just as tired as I was. Tired of pretending, tired of hiding, tired of whatever we had become. The following weeks were a whirlwind of meetings with lawyers and dividing up the life we had built together. I kept the house and half of everything else. It was fair, I suppose, but it felt like paying a huge price for a life I wasn't sure I wanted anymore. That's the thing about building something with someone, it becomes so intertwined that tearing it apart leaves everything looking a bit frayed, a bit worn, a shadow of what it used to be. Starting over is like standing on a cliff edge, the fear of the drop, but also the thrill of the unknown. After Jack, I spent a lot of time figuring things out, getting the restaurants running smooth without him, and just being alone. It wasn't bad, not really. Gave me time to think, to breathe. But then, like a cliché in some corny romance novel, Tom walked into my life, a lawyer with a killer smile that probably won too many cases on charm alone. He came into the restaurant one busy Friday night, his little girl, Emily, in tow. They were hard to miss, she had the same bright laugh as her dad. A glass of your house red for me, and a lemonade for the little miss, Tom smiled at me, not knowing I owned the place. I was filling in for the hostess that night, just trying to keep busy. Throughout the night, I kept catching glimpses of them from the corner of my eye, him explaining bits of the menu to her, her listening so intently like the world depended on it. It was adorable. Made me miss having that kind of simple interaction, which had become so rare in my life. As they were leaving, Tom stopped by the register where I was cashing out another customer. Thanks for a wonderful dinner, he said. The food was excellent, and so was the service. Glad you enjoyed it, I replied, handing the receipt to the customer before turning to give Tom my full attention. And your company seemed pretty top-notch too. That was the beginning of everything. Tom started coming around more often, sometimes with Emily, sometimes alone. We'd chat, casual at first, then deeper conversations as the weeks turned into months. He was different, thoughtful, and real. One evening, he closed his menu and leaned back in his chair, watching me as I wiped down the counter. Erica, would you like to go out sometime? I mean, outside of this place? I paused, cloth in hand, not sure if I was ready. Like a date? Yeah, a date, he smiled, looking a bit nervous himself. As things started getting serious with Tom, I knew it was time for him to meet my boys, Danny and Sam. I won't lie, I was nervous about how they'd take to him. They'd had a rough time after their dad and I split up, and bringing someone new into our lives felt huge. One Saturday, I decided to throw a small barbecue at our place. Casual, no pressure. Tom came over with Emily, and right off, I could see the boys were sizing him up, a bit standoffish at first, which was expected. Tom, bless his heart, didn't push it. He tossed a football to Danny. Hey champ, think you can teach me a few tricks? Danny, a natural athlete, lit up at the chance to show off his skills. Sure, but only if you can keep up, he shot back with a grin. Sam, quieter and more into his books, hung back a bit. Tom noticed and wandered over to him later with a comic book in hand. Heard you're the expert on these. Think you could explain the multiverse theory to me? It's way over my head. Sam's eyes, usually glued to his tablet, looked up, surprised and a bit impressed. Sure, I can do that. Watching them talk, seeing Tom genuinely interested in what Sam had to say, it eased my heart. And Emily, she was a gem, trying to include Sam in the conversation, showing off her own collection of superhero stickers. Just when I thought I had left all the drama behind and could finally get some peace with Tom and the kids, my past came knocking, or rather, ringing, on my day off. I was in the middle of making lunch when my phone buzzed with a number I hadn't seen in a while. It was Jack. My heart sank a bit, not ready to hear whatever he had to say. "Erica, you're not going to believe this, but I'm suing you," Jack's voice chirped through the speaker, too cheerful for the words he was spitting out. "You got more than your fair share in the divorce, and I've been talking to some very good lawyers. My new father-in-law's picking up the tab. We're going to make sure I get what I deserve, which is a lot more than what I walked away with." My head was spinning. "You've got to be kidding me. We split everything fair and square. You agreed to it." "Yeah, well, I've changed my mind. You don't deserve the good life, Erica. Not after how boring and ugly you turned out. I'm going to make sure you pay for it," he sneered, and I could almost see the smug look on his face. I couldn't hold back the tears. They started to fall, hot and fast, as the shock turned to anger, then hurt. Tom walked in right then, his face clouding over when he saw me. "Babe, what's wrong? Who was that on the phone?" "It was Jack. He's suing me. Says he didn't get enough from the divorce and now wants to ruin me," I managed to get out between sobs. A couple of weeks later, the nightmare continued when I bumped into Jack and his new wife, Laura, at the school parking lot. I was there to pick up the boys, and there they were, leaning against their car, looking like they owned the place. Laura spotted me first and smirked. "Look who it is. If it isn't the sad little ex-wife. Not taking very good care of yourself, are you, Erica? Don't worry, Tom will be out the door soon enough, just like Jack was." I felt my face flush with anger. "Watch your mouth, Laura. You know nothing about my life." Jack chuckled, joining in. "Oh, but we do, Erica. We know enough to see you're failing miserably. Maybe it's time someone else took over raising your kids. You're clearly not up to the task." "That's enough, Jack," I shouted, my voice louder than I intended. The few parents milling about turned to look. "You should be ashamed, talking like this in front of your own children." They walked away, leaving me there, fuming and humiliated. The drive back was quiet, my mind racing a mile a minute. How had my life come to this? Being threatened by my ex, insulted in front of my kids. But as we drove, my resolve hardened. Jack wanted a fight? He'd get one. Tom was already home when we arrived, and he could see the fire in my eyes as I walked through the door. "Babe, you okay? You look like you're ready to go to war," he said, a worried look crossing his face as he came over to help with the boys. "I am. I want to hire a private investigator," I said without preamble, dropping my keys on the counter with a clatter. "Jack's up to something, and I want to know what it is." The next day, Tom set up a meeting with the investigator, a grizzled guy named Mike, who had seen more shady dealings than a street corner in a noir film. We laid out everything, and Mike nodded, scribbling notes in a worn leather notebook. It didn't take long for Mike to get back to us. The news he brought wasn't just good, it was golden. Jack hadn't changed one bit, still the same cheater he always was, but this time he was playing around with a stripper. I was sitting at the kitchen table when I forwarded the evidence to Laura, adding just a note. "Thought you should know what your perfect husband is up to." The response was quicker than I expected. Laura called me, her voice choked with tears and something else, shame, maybe? "Erica, I'm so sorry," she stammered out between sobs. "I had no idea. I was so horrible to you, and now, Jack." "Laura, stop. It's not your fault he's a jerk," I found myself saying, the anger softening as I listened to her cry. "Look, I understand more than anyone what it's like to be lied to by that man." There was a heavy pause, and then Laura sniffled loudly. Can I help?" I mean, I want to make this right. Not just for me, but for you too, Erica. I was taken aback. This was the last thing I expected. Let's meet. We can talk about it. Thank you, Erica. Really, thank you, she said, her voice cracking again. As I hung up the phone, a mix of emotions swirled through me. I had started this to protect myself and hit back at Jack, but now it felt like something more. It wasn't just about revenge, it was about setting things right. Somehow, against all odds, Lara and I were on the same side now. This battle had just taken a very unexpected turn. Sitting in the little cafe with the red awning, waiting for Lara, felt surreal. Just weeks ago, she was an enemy, laughing at me alongside Jack. Now, she could be an unexpected ally. The bell above the door jingled, snapping me out of my thoughts as Lara walked in, her eyes scanning the room until they landed on me. Her walk was determined as she slid into the booth across from me, clutching a bulky folder. Erica, thank you for meeting me, she started, her voice shaky but sincere. I nodded, straight to the point. What do you have for me, Lara? Without a word, she pushed the folder across the table. Everything you need to know about Jack's recent activities. I opened the folder, scanning the documents rapidly. My heart sank with each page. There were emails and texts between Jack and several of my top employees, offering them double their current pay to jump ship and join a new venture he was planning. This is just the beginning, Lara said. He's been spreading rumors about your restaurants. Claims of unsanitary conditions, poor service, even paid people to write bad reviews online. The world seemed to spin a little. And the lawsuits? He's gearing up to claim you've hidden profits, that you cheated him out of his rightful share during the divorce, she added, her eyes darkening. I leaned back, absorbing the blow. This was worse than I thought. Jack was playing dirty, trying to take everything I'd worked so hard to build. Does he know you're doing this? I asked, eyeing her carefully. Lara shook her head vigorously. No, and he can't know. Not yet. I can't believe I was so blind. Just beat him, Erica. Show him he can't push us around. I took the documents home and showed them to Tom, who read through them with a furrowed brow. We've got him, Tom said confidently after a long silence. With this evidence, we can not only defend against his claims, but go on the offensive. He won't know what hit him. Buoyed by Tom's confidence, I knew what I had to do next. The following day, I called a meeting with all my staff at the main restaurant. The air was tense as everyone gathered, whispering about the urgent summon. Thank you for coming on such short notice, I began, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. I'm sure you've heard rumors lately, bad reviews, talks of unsanitary conditions. It's all a targeted attack on us, by my ex-husband Jack. The room was silent for a moment before Marco, now my head chef, stood up. We're with you, Erica. We know the truth. We see how hard you work, how much you care. Jack's got nothing on you. Nods and murmurs of agreement followed, the team's solidarity palpable. Thank you, I said, feeling a surge of relief and determination. And I want to take this a step further. Starting today, we're installing live cameras in the kitchens. Let our customers see the truth for themselves. The announcement was met with applause, the team rallied by the proactive approach. I didn't stop there. I took to social media, posting a video explaining the situation. Come see for yourself, I invited our customers. Take a tour, watch our chefs at work. We have nothing to hide. The response was overwhelming. Bookings for kitchen tours came flooding in, and the community support was incredible. Our reservations spiked, people eager to stand with us against the underhanded tactics, trying to undermine our integrity. A week later, Jack called me and offered to discuss our differences. The meeting was set in one of those upscale places that Jack always liked, the kind where they charge you $10 just to breathe their air. As soon as we were all seated, Jack wasted no time. Erica, I'm willing to be generous here, he started, his voice oozing false charm. I'm ready to forgive you for all the trouble you've caused, And all I'm asking in return is a couple of your restaurants and, let's say, a small compensation of $1 million. I stared at him, stunned by his audacity. Then, the absurdity of his demand hit me, and I couldn't help but burst out laughing. You're joking, right? Please tell me this is a joke. I'm dead serious, Erica. It's more than fair, considering the circumstances, Jack sneered, looking at Lara. Tell them, honey. Tell them your dad's backing us up. Lara's expression was unreadable at first, then she turned to Jack, her voice calm but cold enough to chill the wine. Actually, Jack, there's been a change of plans. Jack blinked, confused. What are you talking about? Lara stood up, her chair scraping back sharply. She reached into her purse, pulling out a stack of papers. I'm talking about this, Jack. She threw the papers on the table, they scattered slightly, the word divorce visible on the top sheet. Jack's face went white as he picked up the papers, his hands trembling. Lara, what, why? Because I know about your affairs, all of them. Your sweet stripper was the final straw. Lara's voice broke slightly, but she quickly composed herself. And my father, he's indeed getting his lawyers involved, but not to help you. They'll be representing me in the divorce and suing you for everything you've done. She turned to me, her eyes softer. Erica, I should have believed you from the start. I'm so sorry for everything. I reached out, squeezing her hand briefly. It's okay, Lara. We both fell for his lies. But it's over now. Lara nodded, pulling her hand back and taking a deep breath. It is. She looked back at Jack, who was now slumped in his chair, his face buried in his hands. Goodbye, Jack. With that, Lara walked out of the restaurant, her head held high. The silence that followed was heavy. Jack finally looked up, his eyes red. Erica, please, I can change. Don't let her do this. Don't let her ruin me. Tom's laugh was harsh, echoing slightly in the suddenly too quiet restaurant. You did that all on your own, Jack. Erica has nothing to do with it. And as for that lawsuit you were so eager about, expect one from us for defamation. And trust me, we have more than enough to bury you. We stood up, ready to leave this mess behind. Jack remained seated, a broken figure who'd finally run out of moves. The courtroom was hushed as Tom and I waited for the judge to deliver the final verdict. My hands were clammy, clasped tightly together in my lap, while Tom, ever the rock, gave my hand a reassuring squeeze. The judge looked over the rim of his glasses, his voice steady and clear. In the matter of the defamation and damage to reputation brought by Ms. Erica against Mr. Jack, the court finds in favor of the plaintiff, Ms. Erica. It is ordered that Mr. Jack pay a sum of $500,000 in damages. A gasp went through the courtroom, mostly from Jack's side, but the sound was music to my ears. Tom leaned over, his whisper just for me. We did it, babe. You stood your ground, and you won. I could hardly believe it. After everything Jack had put me through, justice was finally served. I felt a tear slip down my cheek, not of sorrow, but of relief, of closure. But our legal victories didn't end there. Lara, true to her word, had gone after Jack with everything she had. Her father's lawyers were relentless, and Jack was ordered to pay a massive settlement for his infidelity and the emotional distress he caused. In the aftermath, Jack's restaurant empire began to falter. Saddled with debt and a tarnished reputation, he couldn't keep up. When his main restaurant came up for sale, Tom nudged me gently. You should buy it, turn it into something good. And I did. I purchased his restaurant at a fraction of its worth. One afternoon, as I surveyed my new property, Lara walked in. Since the trial, we'd found solace in our shared struggles and had become unlikely friends. Looks different when it's empty, doesn't it? She remarked, her voice echoing slightly in the vacant space. It does. But it won't be for long. I'm thinking of turning this place into a family-friendly venue, something the community can really enjoy. I shared, excited about the possibilities. We walked through the empty restaurant, planning and dreaming about what it could become. Lara, now free from Jack's shadow, was thinking about starting her own business, perhaps something in interior design. "You've got an eye for it," I encouraged her. "You helped me see the potential in this old place." As we stood there, talking about the future, I felt a profound sense of peace. The battles were over, the past finally put to rest. I had my family, my friends, and a future that looked brighter than it had in years. "You know, I never thought we'd end up here," Lara said, gesturing around us. "Me neither," I laughed. "But I'm glad we did. It's funny how life works out, isn't it?" As we left the building, the sun was setting, casting long shadows and bathing the street in golden light. I took a deep breath, feeling truly free for the first time in years. The road hadn't been easy, but it led me here, to this moment, this feeling of complete and utter freedom.